All right, guys, welcome back to our Jacksonville Jaguars rebuilding series. I'm your man, Tuxedo T-Shirt, and I want to welcome you back to episode number 6 of this glorious series. First of all, I apologize for the resolution on this video, not quite as high as our typical standard. I am recording on a different television today, but I'll be back to my normal, beautiful television for our next episode. Here we go. Get straight into it. The 2014 NFL campaign comes to a close. Jacksonville Jaguars were a lackluster 3-7 at the midway point of the year. You can see there, this is the first half of the season. Started off well with 3 out of 4 wins, followed by a 4-game skid caused predominantly due to a long series of injuries that the team, unfortunately, was held captive by. Here we are, the second half of the season. We'll go, I'll just show you everything. Here we are, second half of the season. As you can see, more successful than the first half. Fortunately, we got a pretty strong contingent of guys back for games that mattered, and though we started the second half of the season with a big loss to the Saints, after that, we were very competitive. We won 4 of our final 6 games, and the games we did lose, we lost by no more than 1 score. We even laid the boots to the Steelers a little bit. And let's quickly start off by going through the box scores. First game, 26-3 loss at the Saints. This was a game where we were missing Brandon Mosley, Eugene Monroe, and Jason Slowey from our starting group of offensive linemen. And on the defensive side of the ball, both Jesse Williams and Linval Joseph were out. So hugely decimated in the in the trenches, both on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball, and it showed. Juan Deli in a lackluster game, 208 yards, a pick. Drew Brees wasn't phenomenal, an impressive total for passing. However, his completion percentage was just 53%. Through a pick, though, Delian, of course, was worse. Running the football, Mark Ingram, 95 yards. Denard Robinson, a lackluster 43 yards on 14 yards, 3 fumbles. Ouch. Brutal. Not a strong game all the way around. Receiving the ball, Adrian Laskowski, second-year man, wide receiver, 6'4", 215, had 100 yards off 8 catches, including a touchdown. Cecil Shorts led the way for the Jags, 72 yards off 5 catches. Defensively, rookie sensation Jonathan Cyprin led the way with 11 tackles. However, we had our best tackler, Darrell Washington, out of the game with injury, just another very important cog in our defensive machine who was out. Sacks, meanwhile, we had 2 from Junior Gillette, 1 for the Jags and Marcus White, the other coming from the Saints, Victor Butler. Interceptions, Jesse Williams. It's interesting, Jesse Williams is on the list. I believe I have it written in my notes that he did not play this game. He was out week 10. Maybe he had just come back, actually. I'm not sure. He missed significant time at the end of the last video. So you guys can see on our last video the weeks he was out. It appears as though the other injured guys are not in the list. So we'll see. I promise I'm not trying to lie to you people. Garrett Hartley, 4 for 4. Josh Scobie, a rough 1 for 3. Punting the ball, Anger, 45.5 yards per kick. Decent. Kick return game, pretty lackluster. Punt return game, again, pretty lackluster. So an icky game, but fortunately the last icky game we really had all season. Following that loss, we won against the Titans, 24-16, division win, which is great. Delian, very impressive, 213 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Bested Jake Locker, a fellow young quarterback. Delian's completion percentage eclipses the 55% mark, which is great. Robinson, the game's leading rusher, beating out Chris Johnson, which is always great. Darren Sproles kicking in another 31 yards along the ground, which is great to see. Throwing a touchdown there as well for Robinson. Blackman, 65 yards off 7 catches and a touchdown. Very nice. Defensively, we got 11 tackles from Perry Riley, who I will say, he's certainly no Darrell Washington, who for all intents and purposes had to have been the 2013 NFL Defensive Player of the Year. But Perry Riley, to his credit, played very well in his stead. Kamarion Wimbley had the game's only sack, and there was 1 pick in this one. Rashawn Peterson recording that interception, which is weird because I didn't see an interception under the passing totals of either of the quarterbacks. So that's It's one of those little interesting things that Madden does sometimes. Kicking the ball, Rob Baronis was 3 for 3. Josh Scobie 1 for 2. A second straight bad game for him. Anger 45.1. Kick returns, boom. Punt returns, boom. And that be the game story. Basically, just a matter of very simple formula. You best them in the pass game, you best them in the run game, and you hold on for the win. This was a 3-point loss against the Colts at home. 16-13, the final score. Just a squeaker. Almost took it out, but not quite. Andrew Luck, impressive. 219 through the air. 1 touchdown, no picks. Juan Delian, 187 yards. No picks, but no touchdowns either. And his percentage for completions dipped below 50%, which is rough. Denard Robinson, a very good game. Only 8 carries, but he had 68 yards and a touchdown. Impressive stuff. Darren Sproles kicked in 10 carries for 39 yards. Ahmad Bradshaw leading the way for the Colts. 63 yards off 18 carries. Receiving-wise, James Jones led the game for the Colts. 8 catches, 83 yards. Justin Blackmon just behind him in the catches department was 6, but he actually had more yards, 85 for him. The game's only receiving touchdown went to Dwayne Allen, tight end for Indianapolis. Defensively, Xavier Gooden led the way, 9 tackles for him. Xavier Gooden had an absolutely stellar season. When we get to the season stats, that'll verify that for you, no problem. Kicking the ball, Lawrence Tynes went 3 for 3. Josh Scobie 2 for 2. Punting the ball, Anger Bests McAfee, no problem. Kick returns, boom, nothing really there. Punt returns, boom, nothing again, very exciting there. A tight loss, but one of our final losses of the season, considering we won most of our games from this point out, finishing with a 7-9 record. Carolina Panthers won this one. That was our third last loss of the season. I was forgetting the disappointing loss against the Jets, who coming into that one had just 3 wins. But we'll get to that in the playoff picture in a moment. The reality was we're actually pretty close to making the playoffs. Here we go. Juan Delian, very good game. 266 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Besting Cam Newton, who had just 148 yards and nothing doing with the rest of that. 64% completions for Juan Delian, which is great. Darren Sproles led the game on the ground, 17 carries, 85 yards. Markeith Hickman had 10 for 22. He was in there because Denard Robinson missed weeks 13 to 15 with a broken thumb, which sucks, but happens unfortunately. Sproles very good in his wake. Drick Haskell led the game in receiving, 65 yards off 6 catches, which is great. The rookie doing some good work in the slot. Taylor Thompson, tight end, finally starting to produce 6 catches, 42 yards, and a touchdown. Blackmon also kicked in 67 yards and a touchdown. Cecil Short, 67 yards off just 4 carries. Nice job building up there. Luke Kuechly, sick player. 15 tackles. Xavier Gooden had 9. Sacks-wise, we had 2 sacks on our side of the ball from Andre Branch, 2 for Charles Johnson on the other side. Interceptions, none in this one. Kicking the ball, Graham Gano, 2 for 3. Josh Scobie, 1 for 1. Punting the ball, one of the few times Brian Anger gets bested. Matt McBriar besting him by 2 yards per punt. Ted Ginn had a return touchdown in this one. That was the difference, clearly. Aside from that, lackluster return game. Punt returns, boom. Nothing really special there. Ted Ginn Jr. Is it Ted Ginn or Ted Ginn? I've heard it said both ways. I think it's Ted Ginn. You guys can be the judges of that, because whenever I get a name wrong, you guys always correct me. But that's it. Here we go. Next game. This was a loss against the Kansas City Chiefs. Juan Delian, 235 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks. Alex Smith, 211, no touchdowns, 1 pick. So Juan Delian bests a veteran quarterback this time. Completion percentage well over 50%, which is great. Jamal Charles had a great game, 19 carries, 141 yards, and a touchdown. Darren Sproles, a little more lackluster, 22 for 72 and a touchdown. Not his best work. In wake of Denard Robinson. Cecil Shorts led the game in receiving yards, 75 off 6 catches. No touchdowns there. Jordan Babineau and Xavier Gooden led the way, 12 tackles each for their respective squads. Gooden also kicked in a sack, along with Thaddeus Gibson and Tamba Hali of the Chiefs. Picks in this one, Dwayne Gratz kicking in the only one of the game. Ryan Suckup, 3 for 3 in the kicking game, including 1 for 50+. Brian Anger just barely bests Dustin Colquitt in the average punt game. Still 10 punts too many in a game. Kick return game pretty lackluster. Punt return game even more lackluster, and that be that in a tight tight game that saw the Jacksonville Jaguars suffer their eighth loss of the season. And from this point on, it was do or die. We were sitting at 5-8, and if we won out and the Pittsburgh Steelers lost out, we would still have a chance of making the playoffs, despite everything else that had gone on this season with the injuries, everything else. And the reality is we stepped up. We went into Houston, into a division rivals stadium, and we won. Matt Schaub had a decent game, 292 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Juan Delian protected the ball, no picks, no touchdowns either, but 229 yards, still decent. Completed 50% of his passes. The run game, however, Darren Sproles did very well, had a touchdown, 81 yards off 19 carries, also scoring his first career touchdown. Markeith Hickman, 36 yards off 10 carries. Arian Foster was mostly held at bay, 53-14. Solid job by our defense, keeping one of the league's best runners at bay. Cecil Shorts led the game, 99 yards off 8 catches. DeAndre Hopkins had the game's only touchdown. Andre Johnson had a nice game as well, 82 yards receiving. Brian Cushing, a disgusting 16 tackles. Dwayne Gratz, Xavier Gooden, Antoine Blake, and Darrell Washington, coming back from injury, all had 9. All tied in leading the Jacksonville Jaguars in that category. 2 sacks for Thaddeus Gibson, 1 for Julian Stanford coming off the end from his outside linebacker spot. And the only pick in today's game was rookie sensation 2.0, Terrell Jefferson, the first overall pick of the 2014 NFL Draft. Josh Scobie went 3 for 3. Jay Feely went 2 for 3. Too bad for Feely, considering that was the 3-point difference in the game. Brian Anger, a lackluster game in the punting game, but that's okay. Keshawn Martin, Dexter McCluster, not doing much in the return game, and there you go, another lackluster performance in the punt return game. McCluster has done very little to legitimize his spot on the roster. With that being said, we got the win, and here we go. This was a do-or-die game. We lost. We were out. The beautiful thing was we came out and we won it, 22-7, at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who coming into this one would have had an 8-7 record. No, that's wrong. An 8-6 record. We had a 6-8 record. Our only hope was for them to lose out, us to win out. And the reality was we had a great game. Juan Delian, 230 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Ben Roethlisberger, 266 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 picks. We picked off Big Ben 4 times. Juan Delian besting the veteran there. Denard Robinson had a great game. 21 carries, 71 yards. Not a ton of yards per carry, but consistent, getting 21 carries. Darren McFadden, our old foe, was worse in this game. 15 carries, 52 yards. Again, not a great average, but hey, they weren't willing to feed him the rock, and that's part of why we took it. Darren Sproles, 6 carries, 29 yards. What I like about this is we gave our 2 running backs a combined 27 carries. That when you have the ball that much, you're going to control the clock, and you're going to be able to run it out with the big lead. There we go. Heath Miller, 10 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown, leading the way for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Justin Blackman, 7 catches for 81 yards. Taylor Thompson kicking in a receiving touchdown. Ryan Clark led the game with 13 tackles for the Steelers. Darrell Washington led the way for the Jags with 8 sacks in this one. There was 1 from Andre Branch. The picks, meanwhile, 4 for the Jags, 2 from Terrell Jefferson, 1 from Wesley Woodyard, 1 from Darrell Washington. The Pittsburgh Steelers got theirs from cornerback Eric Wright. Kicking the ball, Josh Scobie, 3 for 4. Punting the ball, boom, Brian Anger, just 5 punts in this one, and his average was disgusting. 52 yards a punt. That's ridiculous. Kick returns, boom. Punt returns, boom. And everything came down to this last game. If we won and the Pittsburgh Steelers lost, we'd be in. We were playing in the Meadowlands against the Jets, who at this point had just a 3-12 record. And unfortunately, we lost by a score of 44-41. And now it didn't end up mattering because if I remember correctly, the Steelers won their game, which guaranteed them a playoff spot. However, I give this team credit despite the injuries. And actually, this is something I should also say. By this point in the season, aside from Michael Ashore and Blaine Gabbert, who are both on the IR, we were 100% healthy for this game, really for the first time all year. We had Denard Robinson, Cameron Bradfield, and Marcus White, a couple of backups, out until Week 15. However, for these final 2 games of the year, we were perfectly healthy, And to me, it says something about what we could do. Obviously, losing this game was a big disappointment, but the reality was we weren't going to be able to get the help that we needed to make the playoffs anyways. Delian, 305 yards. I believe that's his first career 300-yard game. 3 touchdowns, 3 picks are a drag, but the 3 touchdowns pretty sweet. Mark Sanchez, 202 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Completion percentage for Delian, 57. Completion percentage for Sanchez, 36. Running the ball, Jaquiz Rogers ran all over us. 23 carries for 159 yards and a touchdown. That's way too much. However, Denard Robinson ran free as well. 16 carries, 111 yards, equaling Rogers' 6.9 yard per carry average. Sproles also kicked an impressive 33 carries off 33 yards off 5 carries. Cecil Shorts led the game in terms of catches, 8 for 98 and a touchdown. Justin Blackman also kicking in a touchdown. Santonio Holmes led the game in yardage, 116 yards off 7 catches. Defensively, Xavier Gooden and David Harris led the way, 11 tackles apiece. In the sack department, this game had 5 sacks total, 4 of them coming from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Gibson, Washington, White, and Branch each getting in for 1. Beckett Schultz got in once for the New York Jets. And the interceptions for Harris, Brock, and Moliner get them for the Jets. Demetrius McCray gets 1 for the good guys. Roy Sins, I guess that's how you say it, with 3 completed field goals for the Jets. Scobie just 2 for 3, which is a drag because, again, in a game when you lose by 3, you hate to have a missed field goal in there. Anger loses narrowly in the punt battle, but that's all right. Kick game, boom. Kick return game, I should say. Punt return game, boom. Nothing much interesting. And so the Jaguars finished the season at a 7-9 mark. Not bad considering the injuries that were that ailed us. And at the end of the day, when we started this franchise, I said my goal was to make the playoffs by season 3, and then after that, win the Super Bowl by season 5. And the reality is, I think we are very much on pace to do that, considering we came very close to making the playoffs in season number 2 with a lot of injuries working against us. So here we go. We got all the box scores done. We're on to season stats. Also, I'm adding in a little bonus footage after season stats. I'd like to go to team season stats just so you guys can see how we match up with other teams in the NFL pertaining to how our offense and defensive numbers look as a whole. Just so you guys can get some more ideas about what we maybe should do in the offseason, what we should look to address, and all that. Some of that stuff would have come out in the box scores. Some of it will come out now in the season stats, but we'll dig more into that. Here we go. Blaine Gabbert played just 2 games this season. He played quite well. 82.5 QB rating, 332 yards, 3 touchdowns. His completion percentage was 55%, which is up from last year. However, that was basically matched by Juan Delian. 54% completions for him for the year. QB rating is lower, 71.8, 3,100 passing yards in his 16 starts. 15 touchdowns, 12 picks. All in all, not bad at all for the rookie. It would have been great to see exactly what Gabbert could do if he had a full season to work, but unfortunately, he was gone, and given that he's an upcoming free agent also, I should tell you guys this, Gabbert wants approximately $5 million a season to come back. The reality is he's not going to come back. I think we need to hitch our wagon to the Juan Delian horse, so to speak. Moving on to rushing, now Darren Sproles, as I explained in the last video, not all of these stats are with us, but a lot of them are. I think approximately 350 of those 443 yards rushing came with us. If Sproles wants to come back for a cheap price, I'd happily have him. Excuse me. He rushed for 2 touchdowns this season. Denard Robinson, hey. 95 carries, 442 yards, good for a season average of 4.7 yards per carry. That's impressive. Robinson, I'd personally given up on him after last season for being a full-time back. I thought, this is a good guy who might be able to do some returning, catching out of the backfield, that kind of thing. Good West Coast dude, but probably not a full-time runner. The reality is, with his 2 touchdowns, 4.7 yards per carry, who knows? Maybe he's the guy. He's got to learn to hold on to the ball. 6 fumbles does not do a lot for me. And I'm not committing to him as our running back of the future, but hey, the kid can actually play. Michael LaShore, his season unfortunately was a disaster. We gave up very little to get him into town, and again, we paid him $80,000 this season because almost all of his money was guaranteed. So the Detroit Lions ate that money in the trade. So we don't regret acquiring him from Detroit. However, the reality is 108 carries, 311 yards, 2.9 yards per carry, and 0 touchdowns. Not going to do anything for us to bring him back. Even for a small amount of money, there's going to be other guys who are better in free agency or in the draft. Juan Delian, 66 carries, 158 yards, and a touchdown. Markeith Hickman, 79 yards off 27 carries and a touchdown. Marcel Reese, 50 off 24. And that's pretty much it, aside from the scraps at the very bottom. Our two top receivers both had 80 yards this season. Unfortunately, Cecil Shorts didn't get quite to the 1,000-yard mark, but 959 is still pretty darn good. 5 touchdowns for him. Justin Blackman, 1,135 yards, 5 touchdowns for him. That's even up from last year. Blackman just tearing it up. Let's hope he stays healthy and does the same thing. Taylor Thompson, 347 yards off 47 carries. His numbers finally starting to go up in a year where he was healthy the whole way through. Next season, I'd love to see him over 500 yards receiving. He had 3 touchdowns. Rick Haskell, 485 yards in the slot as a rookie. I'd love to see what this guy could do eventually with a little more playing time. Hopefully we can go with some more 3 receiver sets as time goes on. Figure that out. I have been considering the idea of changing to more of a spread offense as opposed to West Coast offense, specifically because Delian has a little bit of a stronger arm than Gabbert. His throwing power is a full 90. Gabbert, 89. Not a huge difference, obviously, but I think Delian is just capable of making some of the throws that Gabbert's not. For example, I don't believe Blaine Gabbert has the tight spiral feature, whereas Juan Delian does. Helps carry the ball a little more, helps him be a little more accurate. So we'll see as that goes on. Anyways, Haskell, great season as a rookie. 2 touchdowns for him as well. LaShore, 87 off 18. And you guys can read the rest for yourself. Ace Sanders is the fourth receiver in, 177 yards off 12 catches, 2 touchdowns. Love to see him get more involved, and he would in a spread offense. Mohamed Massaquoi in what will be his last season as a Jag, 98 yards, 12 catches. Ryan Otten had just 2 receptions all season, but he kicked in a touchdown. Nice job by him. Blocking, our main sack allower this season was Luke Jokel with 6. Eugene Monroe allowed 3 from the left side. All in all, I'm not disappointed with these numbers. Keithan Cross is a rookie, led in 5. I expect that number to go down, but the reality is we averaged basically 1 sack a game, which has got to be one of the best totals, which is phenomenal because for a rookie quarterback who played a lot down the stretch, you never want to have them facing a lot of pressure. That's the fastest way to picks and sacks and all that, all those bad things. On defense, Xavier Gooden came into his own this year. Xavier Gooden has turned into a truly dominant right outside linebacker, and I really feel for opposing quarterbacks who have to stare at him and Darrell Washington all game. 145 tackles for Gooden, 100 for Washington. Both chipped in sacks, 4 for Gooden, 5 for Washington. And Washington, boom, 4 picks. Great from the middle linebacker spot. Second straight year, I believe he should be the Defensive Player of the Year. Obviously, he had some injury issues which held him out for a while, but the fact that he was able to do as much as he did with those injuries, to me, speaks a lot about him. Xavier Gooden, to me, would be a runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year, my goodness. Rookie sensation Jonathan Cyprin, 83 tackles, 1 pick. Antoine Blake, 78, 1 pick. Really happy with the progression of both of our young safeties. I look for big things for both of them. Perry Riley, 76 tackles, considering that Mr. Riley only started 11 games this year, or pardon me, 5 games this year, with Darrell Washington starting the other 11. Pretty phenomenal numbers. 76 tackles, off the charts for that amount of playing time. Demetrius McCray, 70 tackles, 2 picks. Terrell Jefferson, 68 tackles, 4 picks in his rookie season. We look for huge things from him as well. At the midway point of the season, he moved to the number 1 spot on the depth chart, and he's going to stay there. Not to spoil player progressions in a moment, but he's up to 87 overall right now as a 22-year-old corner, which is pretty stellar. He's just turned 23 now that the season's rolled over. Moving forward, I expect huge things from him. Dwayne Gratz, 62 tackles, 1 pick. Wesley Woodyard, 58, 2 picks. Chris Greenwood, 29 tackles, 1 pick. Moving down the list, Linval Joseph, 11 tackles for a loss. Not as strong as he was last year, but he did miss quite a bit of time due to injury. so we won't hold that too much against him. He missed at least 5 games. Jesse Williams, same thing. Our run defense this year was pretty poor, all things considered, but considering the amount of time Darrell Washington, Joseph, and Williams missed, I'm hesitant to really take that at face value. Stanford, 5 sacks. Andre Branch, 6 sacks, despite missing basically the entire first half of the season. Thaddeus Gibson kicked in 5 sacks and a pick as well, a pick from the left end spot, pretty phenomenal. Roy Miller, Marcus White, and Brandon Dieterich, all playing pretty significant time this year, considering the injuries to our interior defensive lineman. Billy Wynn got in a little bit this year, kicking in a sack as well. In the kicking game, Josh Scobie kicked so poorly that I'm thinking it's time to replace him. Just 74%, not good enough by the NFL standards, particularly given the success that kickers across the league are having. He was just 26 of 35. He did kick along a 54, but for example, if we go through his list, he missed 2 field goals this season from the 30 to the 39-yard line. Not acceptable in today's NFL. He also missed 3 from the 40 to 49 marker. He was just 50% from 50 yards and beyond. Just not good enough. Look for us to sign or draft somebody in that spot. Punting the ball, Brian Anger was great again this year. Kick returns, I think it's back to the drawing board. McCluster, his 24-yard average wasn't pathetic this season, but not good enough to merit a spot on the roster strictly for him. He did have 1 punt return touchdown, but I personally would like more to that spot. And so that's our rundown. We're going to go to the the team season stats now. Just for I want to keep this under 2 minutes, but just to give us a quick example of final team stats showing us where we sit among the rest of the league on offense and defense. Starting on offense, you can see the Giants led the NFL with 6,300 yards of offense this season. On the other side, by the way, there's the Toronto Mounties. What a great logo they have. We weren't close to the bottom in terms of the bottom 5 or anything, but we had 4,985 yards on offense, still closer to the bottom than it was to the top. Not a pathetic number, but just something we could improve upon. Again, passing yards, not at the bottom, not at the top. Probably a little closer to the bottom, I would imagine. Maybe actually closer to the midway point. Actually, yeah, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So top 10 team, actually. That's better than I thought. 35-50 for the year. So our passing game doing pretty well. Run game, though, I think we all know where this is going to end up. Our run game, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 worst in the entire NFL. 1,435 yards. Just not very strong in the run game. Points per game. This is, to me, what is really worrisome. We were in the bottom 10 in the league, just 18.4 points per game. To put that in perspective, the Giants were scoring 29.5. That's 11 points more than we were. Just not good. So if we could do anything to improve upon that, probably the run game would go a long way to that. For example, you can see passing touchdowns were nowhere near the bottom. I think we actually did quite well in this category, finishing with 18. That's not flying with some of the top dogs. For example, the Giants had 34, but that's 7 more than anybody else. This is where we got killed. Rushing touchdowns, we had just 6. We're in the bottom 4 in the entire National Football League. By the way, just pointing out that the Mounties had 9 touchdowns all year. That is truly sad. Poor Canada. Defensively, so the story basically is that we're passing the ball well, but it's not equaling points, maybe because our run game is pretty lousy at this point. Defensively, here we go. As you can see, we're not at the bottom of the list in terms of points allowed. Actually, I should say top of the list, because we are looking at the teams who allowed the least amount of yards. And you can see here, we are actually in the bottom 5. We allowed 5,680 yards. Now, a lot of these teams are tight. Even if we had allowed, let's say 200 yards less this season, that would allow us to move up the charts by 6 or 7 teams, but just not good to ever be that low on the list. You can see here in the passing game, we allowed the 5th most yards. That, to me, is mind-boggling. To me, that tells me with the quality DBs we have, that tells me we're just not getting to the quarterback enough. Obviously, the injuries to Andre Branch, Thaddeus Gibson not helping out with that, but we need to look at upgrading our pass rush, certainly. Rushing yards allowed, we finished here, I think a little closer to the bottom list, about 22nd. It says right there, ranked 22nd in the league. Not great. To me, I have a hard time blaming the personnel on that. I think that's more of a factor. Again, I can't really judge our rushing offense, our rushing defense too strictly because of the injuries to Jesse Williams, who is a run stopper, defensive tackle Linval Joseph, who's an archetypal run stopper, and Darrell Washington, who's just a tackling machine who wasn't out there for a long time. Points allowed, you can see we're not among the best in the league. We're not among the worst in the league. So I guess we're just okay. Sacks, you can see, again, we're not at the bottom of the league, but we're not close to the top. I think we're probably closer to the bottom. And there we are. We're ranked 22nd again. Another inkling that we need to improve our pass rushing game desperately. Fumble recoveries. We actually almost were at the top of the league, 8, probably because of rookie sensation Jonathan Cyprin. Interceptions, I think we're actually very close to the top of the league. We finished tied for most in the entire league with 18, which is pretty stellar. However, as a whole defense, being ranked 22nd is just not acceptable. From there, I think that's really all we have to see. Let's quickly check out turnovers. Our differential was actually quite good. We were a +9 because we got a lot of picks, so we didn't throw a ton of interceptions. Giveaways, we had 17, which is pretty high, but takeaways 26 is excellent. So give our defense credit for that. I think the biggest thing for this offseason is going to be to improve our run game. Second thing is to improve our pass rush, personally. But you guys can also be the judges of that and let me know what you think. Awards, here we go. We have, let's start off with yearly awards. MVP, you guys might have seen it in the news earlier. Eli Manning finishes atop that list. Colin Kaepernick, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Cam Newton fill out the rest of the top 5. All quarterbacks. Griffin, Wilson, Breeze, all on that list. Martin and Peterson, the only 2 non-quarterbacks unless both running backs. Coach of the Year was Jim Harbaugh of the 49ers. AFC, we'll run these down quick. Offensive Player of the Year, Tom Brady. Defensive Player of the Year, Lawrence Timmons. I'll quickly go back. We'll check for Jaguars on this list, though I don't think we're going to see a whole lot. Here we go. Xavier Gooden finishes 9th, which is sad. Juan Delian, this is a big deal to me. Juan Delian wins AFC Offensive Rookie of the Year. That, to me, bodes well for the future. I think he's a really great player we can build around, but that's just me. Terrell Jefferson finishes 3rd in Rookie of the Year voting. You can see there he's actually a 90 overall. Wow, 90 overall. Oh, sorry, that's right. The notes that I just checked I have not updated since I progressed all the rosters before shooting this video. He is 90 overall at this point, which is phenomenal, having just turned 23. I personally think he's a future AFC Defensive Player of the Year, but we'll see how that goes. Tom Brady wins Quarterback of the Year. Juan Delian, boom, AFC, 7th best quarterback. Already cracked the top half of the conference, which is pretty stellar. Running back, no shocker, we don't have anybody on the list. Wide receiver, Justin Blackmon finishes 4th. I'd love to see him get higher on that list. Cecil Shorts comes in at 9th. Offensive Lineman of the Year, we have no Jags. Hopefully we can get somebody on that list eventually someday. Defensive Lineman, nobody. Speaking about that pass rush, DBs, Terrell Jefferson finishes 5th in voting, which is pretty good for a rookie. Kickers, nobody, which means, if we weren't going to get rid of Josh Scobie before, I think we might have to now. Pro Bowl voting, here's the AFC. I'm going to actually run through the AFC list. For the NFC list, I'll just scroll through it so you guys can read it at home if you're interested. Tom Brady, Matt Schaub, Ben Roethlisberger, the quarterbacks. Halfbacks, Ray Rice, Chris Johnson, Shane Vereen, and Taz Stone. Fullbacks, Charles Clay, Marcel Reese. That's a Jag. Perfect. Wide receivers, James Jones, A.J. Green, Mario Manningham, Golden Tate, DeAndre Hopkins, Stevie Johnson, and Josh Cribbs. Tight ends, Antonio Gates, Owen Daniels, and Rob Gronkowski. Offensive lineman, Nate Solder, Dwayne Brown, Kelechi Osmele, Logan Mankins, Eric Wood, Ryan Wendell, Marshall Yanda, David DeCastro, Marcus Gilbert, and Sebastian Vollmer. Defensive lineman, Marcus Hunt, Carlos Dunlap, Michael Johnson, Camarion Wimbley, Jason Hatcher, Geno Atkins, and Mike Martin. Linebackers, Justin Houston, Von Miller, Lawrence Timmons, Derek Johnson, Jacksonville Jaguars, Xavier Gooden starting in the Pro Bowl, and Robert Mathis. Cornerbacks, DJ Hayden, Tim Jennings, DJ Moore, and Jason McCourty. Safeties, Eric Weddle, Tashawn Gibson, Tyvon Branch, Rashad Jones. Kicker, Steven Gronkowski, and punter, Drew Butler. So that's the AFC team. I'll quickly just dart back for the NFC team again. I'm just going to talk about something else as I flip through this list. You guys can check it out if you're interested. Small update also for those of you who have been checking out my practice videos. Thank you for doing so. If you're somebody who does not check out my practice videos for this season or for this series, please feel free to do so. I think they're pretty cool. And it's a way for me to show you guys some actual gameplay footage for this team. So that little ad aside, here we go on to the next thing. We got the standings next. As always is the pattern here with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Final standings. We actually finished second in the AFC South, which is pretty impressive, up from the bottom of the barrel 1 year ago. We'll start with the AFC North. Ravens and Steelers again. There you see the Steelers making the playoffs at 9-7. That was almost our playoff spot, but not quite. Ravens and Steelers make the playoffs. Bengals and Browns finish 7-9, just on the outside looking in. Texans win our division 11-5. They ran away with it. But hey, gotta say it's pretty sweet. We finish above the Titans. We finish above the Colts, both of whom were looking down on us last year. Jags finishing with a 7-9 record. Patriots and Bills finish the regular season. Both with playoff markers. Jets and Dolphins in the toilet. AFC West. Raiders take it with an 8-7-1 record. Not exactly a barn-burning team. Chargers and Chiefs were close. Broncos 5-10-1 following the retirement of Peyton Manning. Vikings 10-6. Packers 10-6. Packers make the playoffs, so they're listed second here. That's curious. Bears and Lions have 2 ties this year. Something I'll never understand about Madden is the amount of ties you see. Tampa Bay wins the NFC South 11-5. Saints 9-6-1. Falcons and Panthers pretty close as well, 8-8 and 7-9 respectively. NFC East, Giants win the division at 12-4. Redskins 11-5. Cowboys 9-6-1. Eagles 7-9. NFC West, last one up. 49ers and Seahawks, shocker, make the playoffs. 13-3 for the 49ers, 11-5 for the Seahawks. Mounties, formerly the St. Louis Rams, finish with a record of 3-13. Cardinals 3-12-1. I also love that the Mounties are in the NFC West for a city that's actually located quite far in the east. But that's beside the point. So that's everybody. Top team in the NFL this year, 13-3, San Francisco 49ers. The team that finishes at the bottom of the heap. Well, fortunately, it's not us this year. Cardinals finish there 3-12-1. Jacksonville Jaguars sit at 22nd, which means that come the NFL draft, we will have the 11th overall pick. All scouting, by the way, will be covered in the. I promised that scouting would be covered in this video. I've decided to do all scouting for next video. That way we can do the scouting, and then immediately afterwards we can do the NFL draft live, which to me just makes sense because that way it'll be fresh in our minds. Just figure it just makes more sense. If you don't like that, you can let me know, and we'll do it differently for next season. But for now, I just think that makes the most sense. Which means the last thing we got to do is player progression. We had really no roster moves. I think I mentioned this last video because I did this right after our 8th game. But we added in a third center on the roster just for added interior offensive lineman depth. Given that Mosley was out, Slowey was out for a long time, and we added Darren Sproles. But we did not make any signings between the midway point of the season and now, so there's no roster moves. So here's our updated rosters. Juan Delian started the season off at, I believe, an 80. He was an 84 at midseason. Now he's up to an 88. His throwing accuracy is way up. Throwing power, 90. Boom. And his awareness is up to 85 from 80, which was at the midseason way. Blaine Gabbert out all year on the IR. Actually regressed a little bit to an 82 from an 83. Matt Scott, to me, he's a solid backup. He's under contract for 2 more seasons, still on his rookie deal, which is great. He'll be excellent depth down the line at the quarterback spot. Blaine Gabbert will leave in free agency. I don't see any reason to make a play for him because we have Delian under contract for such a small amount of money. He's getting paid over the next 3 years, making just over $4 million, barely more than $1.2 million a season. And Matt Scott also under contract for very little money. He's making about $1.4 million over the next 2 years. So it doesn't make any sense to pay Blaine Gabbert $5 a year to sit on the bench. Well, we'll use that money somewhere else gladly. Darren Sproles sitting atop the halfback list here. He was not the top cat on the depth chart. That was Denard Robinson down the stretch with the injury to Michael LaShort. And Robinson, as you can see, up to an 81 from a 78 at the midseason mark. For him, it's mostly a matter of constantly working on his carrying, which is up to 90 from 88 at the midway point of the season. Just because he puts a lot of balls on the ground. It's also always been for him. It's always been an issue of awareness, and also just working on his elusiveness, working on his juke moves, which are excellent, up to a 92. His spin move 85, just trying to get him as dynamic as possible. His awareness also up to an 84. At the midway point of the season, it was only an 81. I just take pride in that because when we first got him, I think his awareness was in the 30s. If you go back and watch episode number 1, you'll know for sure. But it was awful. Michael LaShore will not be back next season. Hickman up to a 73 from a 72 at the midway point. He's all in all been a pretty disappointing player. He is still a cool mix of strength, speed, agility, and acceleration, but he's got a long way to go if he's ever going to be a feature back. Not overly impressed with him, but hey, Denard Robinson, Darren Sproles, who knows? Maybe they'll be a force to be reckoned with next season. Marcel Reese was a 95, was a 99, is a 99. His run blocking is all we really ever work on, and hey, it was already good. It's just getting better. If I can find it, I thought I missed it, so I went back. There it is, an 88, up from an 85 at the midway point of the season. Wide receivers, this team's stacked. It's just stacked. Got to be one of the best teams in the entire league, and that's especially important when you look at the youth of our wide receivers. We got Justin Blackmon, who's going to need a contract extension next year, so that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. He's going to have the right to demand a lot of cash. 92 up from 89 at the midway point. Cecil Short's 91 up from 89 at the midway point. Drick Haskell up to an 86 from an 83. I believe he was an 80 when the season started, so one rookie season, 6 points up. Pretty sweet. His catching ability up to 88 from 86. His catching in traffic was an 86. It still is an 86 because it was so sick. There was no need to upgrade it. For him, we've worked a lot on his route running ability and his awareness, which is up to 82 at the beginning of the season. That was in the toilet. It was an 80 at the midway point of the season, just trying to work that up. Drick Haskell, man, his acceleration and his height just make him deadly in the slot, which is phenomenal. Ace Sanders, 24 years of age. He's up to an 80. He was an 80 at the midway point of the season. He's been a bit of a project. We'd like to see him get more playing time. However, the reason he doesn't get more is because no one ahead of him is getting hurt, which is really nice considering the problems we've had at other places. He's still a project in terms of his route running. We finally have it up to an 82. His release is still terrible, though it was much worse when he took him over. I think he was in the 40s in the release category. That's partly because his strength is so bad and he's so small in stature. But we'll keep working on that. His agility with his acceleration could make him deadly. And also, I love Haskell 6'4", Sanders 5'7". Just those two totally different body types. I love having them available for our quarterback. Corey Fuller, who we brought in at the beginning of the season as just a developmental guy, up to 80 from 78 at the midway point of the season. He's got 94 speed with a 6'2" figure frame. Good developmental guy to have around. Didn't get into a single game this year, but in case we do have some injuries stack up at the wide receiver spot, we'll be happy to have him. Massaquoi, 28 years of age. He'll be gone from the Jags, but he did have a couple good seasons here, and we thank him for his service. Dexter McCluster also probably gone this year. He's just on a one-year deal. Was brought in to be a returner and just didn't return very well. So that's that. Taylor Thompson up to an 88 from 85. Carrier stayed at a 78. Ryan Otten stayed at a 77. I got to admit, this is probably the one area on the team that I'm most disappointed with. Taylor Thompson is a disgustingly good run blocker for a tight end. 82 is very good. And I honestly don't know what it is with this guy. I think it might be an acceleration. No, acceleration's 87. What was I going to say it was? Maybe it's an agility thing, just not able to get open. But his route running, 77, is very good for a tight end. His catching ability, I don't know what it is that we can't get this guy going. In a West Coast system, a pass-catching tight end who can also run block is so phenomenal. And for whatever reason, he's just not that strong. He did get better in the receiving game this year. He doubled his numbers from a year ago, but we need more out of this kid. That's the bottom line. Derek Carrier, Ryan Otten, same thing. Would love to see more. If we don't, we're going to have to go ahead and draft somebody. Eugene Monroe got hurt in the last game of the season, which brought his total number of injuries for the 2014 campaign to 4, which is embarrassing. Eugene Monroe's injury number isn't great. You can see here it's 78, but that's embarrassing. For a guy we just paid a lot of money to, not a lot of guaranteed money, just $6 million. So that after this season will be down to 4.5 for the next 3 years. I'm not considering moving on from him at this point, but if he's going to go get hurt 4 times next season, we're going to have to seriously think about maybe moving on from Monroe, trading him away, eating that small amount of guaranteed money, and moving on. Marcel Jones is his backup, 76. He got a lot of playing time this year, unfortunately. Keithan Cross up to 85 from 84, the midway point of the season. He's done well this year. 88 run blocking. With his strength, that run blocking ability, it's going to be good. His impact blocking also very good. 82 for an interior offensive lineman at his age is great. His awareness also up to 85 from 83 at the midway point. We expect huge things from Cross, and I think we're going to get them. Will Rackley will leave in free agency. Rackley wants about $4 million a season to re-sign, and we're not giving it to him. Jason Slowey re-upped last year for just under $2 million a season. He will stay on board with the Jags as a backup. We're hoping to draft a center in this year's draft if we can find the right guy, just because we need an upgrade at the middle part of our offensive line if we want to progress our run game anymore. Slowey's got an 85 run blocking ability, but his impact blocking at just 70, I think, is limiting his effectiveness. He'll stay on, and he'll be a backup at basically all the interior offensive line spots because he's got some skills, and for that reason is worth paying. Walton and Hawley, meanwhile, will both leave in free agency. They're both on one-year deals, and we're not terribly interested in bringing either of them back. Brandon Mosley, 85 overall. He's continuing to develop for us. Just a solid run blocker, 88 run blocking. His impact blocking is what we're working on right now, just 78, but his strength at 93. Just another good young interior offensive lineman who I think for next year could do some really, really great things to open some holes. William Campbell, another backup we're paying decent money to. He's making $1.5 million a season for the next 4 years. He's another guy we're just hoping to develop and have be a solid interior backup, 90 strength for him. Impact blocking needs work, but he's a solid guy to have. I'm a big fan of, especially in the offensive line, is having depth, just so you're constantly protected, literally and figuratively. Luke Jokel, 91. He stayed pat, but when you're that good, that young, it's hard to improve. Just that's the bottom line. 91, sick blocker. Cameron Bradfield up to 82 from 81. He's going to probably try and leave in free agency again. Who knows? Maybe this time he'll get paid. If not, he'll come crawling back to us. Thaddeus Gibson up to 87 from 83. Gibson, again, had injury problems this year. If there's a dominant pass rusher in this year's draft, I don't see how we can't take them. Gibson is fine, but he lacks true elite strength. And we just paid him. We paid him a lot of money this offseason. Like Monroe, there wasn't a huge amount of guaranteed money. It wouldn't be the end of the world to cut or trade him. That's not in the plans right now. If anything, I'd want to replace Andre Branch, I think, because Branch has had more injury problems and will need a contract extension next year, and will probably want a huge amount of money, which means we can just trade him along and get a decent return if we're able to find someone elite. If not, we're going to have to find some other way to upgrade our pass rush, though. Billy Wynn actually regressed. I don't get this with Billy Wynn. When we put him out there, he gets sacks. He's got some great numbers. He's got the best power moves of anybody on this whole team at 89. His speed is lackluster at 73, but boom, his acceleration is 85. He just progresses when he's on the field. For whatever reason, his overall number looks terrible. Branch up to 87 as well from 85. His power moves 89, equally as good as Wynn's. We'll see how the season goes for him. The offseason, I should say, goes for him. Like Gibson, he lacks the strength of a truly dominant pass rusher. We'll see how things go. Marcus White was excellent. 83 overall. up from 81. He's another guy who like Bradfield, tried to leave last offseason, came back. This time, I imagine he gets paid. Linval Joseph up to 92 from 91. What is there to say about him? He's just dominant. Jesse Williams up to 88 from 87. Roy Miller is a free agent this upcoming season. He wants about $2 million to come back. I think there's a good chance we pay him. Brandon Diederick, 78 overall. Decent depth guy. For a guy with almost no guaranteed money, he'd be trade bait if there a situation ever arose. It just hasn't yet. Wesley Woodyard up to 86 from 85. Still regressed overall from the beginning of the season, but it's good that he's there. Julian Stanford can sit behind him and develop, come along. They're both guys who just physical freaks. Julian Stanford, this is a cat who weighs 230 pounds, yet his jumping rating is 97. Just unbelievable the amount of stuff he can do. Which is why we were ecstatic to extend him earlier this season. Woodyard right now the starter, however. Middle linebacker Darrell Washington up to 95 from 91. This cat is just ridiculous. 95 tackling ability. He's got everything you could ever want in a linebacker. Just a physical freak who just wreaks havoc everywhere he goes. There's nothing more to say about him. Perry Riley was 78 up to 82. Very good down the stretch. We'd love to get him under contract. Might be challenging to do because he's going to want a lot of money. Xavier Gooden up to 92 from 87. Probably the most dramatic growth from any of our players this year came from Gooden. Up to 94 tackling. My goodness. The same story here from Darrell Washington. Just ridiculous size, speed, strength, all that good stuff. Fortunately for us, over the next 2 seasons, he's making about $700,000 total, because when we originally traded for him from our division rivals, the Tennessee Titans, they ate a bunch of his money because a lot of it was guaranteed. So we're laughing all the way to the bank on him. Torrey Myers, 74 from 72. Lackluster rookie who's probably gone next year. That's just the reality of it. A late pick from last year who's just not panning out. Terrell Jefferson up to 90 from 87. Boom. Ridiculous. Gratz and McCray up to 87 from 86 and 85, respectively. Greenwood up to 86 from 85, a project who's panning out very well. And DeMarcus Van Dyke up to 82 from 79, the midway point of the season. DeMarcus Van Dyke, he's the cat we brought in because of his amazing speed, 98, 96 acceleration. For whatever reason, his return ability isn't very good. We'd love to throw him back there, but he just doesn't have the skills to do that, I guess. Jeremy Harris, a great reserve guy, 81. He's up from 79. You can see here the coverage ratings. Man coverage, we got 90s for all of our top 3 cats, and then press coverage, 85+ for our top 3 cats. Part of the reason why we run that attacking scheme, that press coverage should be helping our ability to rush the passer more. Antoine Blake, up to 92 from 90, just another physical freak, 95 speed. We've been working on his coverage, his awareness, his pursuit up to 80. His tackling when we picked him up, or we didn't pick him up, he was an original Jag, but his tackling was, I think, in the low 50s or high 40s. He's now up to 80, so doing a great job there. Josh Evans up to 84 from 82. He's another cat who's under contract with us for another couple years, which is phenomenal. Great backup. Rookie sensation Jonathan Seifert up to 94 from 90 at the midway point of the season. He's just another dominant guy. As far as I'm concerned, we have the 2 best safeties in the entire National Football League. His hit power is insane. His jumping is insane. His tackling is insane. Just a phenomenal piece to have at our strong safety spot. Backup Chris Brzezinski was an original Jaguar. He's going to leave us this offseason. His plays regressed a little bit. We paid him just $395,000 this season, but he's not under contract for next year. And we're probably gonna look to greener pastures there. So we thank Brzezinski for his time. Josh Scobie sitting at 90 overall. I call foul on that. He's not coming back. Brian Anger up to 92 from 90. Very nice progression from him. Picks, as you can see here, we have the 14th pick, not the 12th pick, but the 14th pick. Our Tampa Bay pick finishes out in the 23 spot. So we have the 2 first-rounders. We still have all of our original picks, minus our 7th rounder. We have the 4th-round pick from Cincy. We'll see how all this stuff pans out as time goes on when our scouting is all done next week. Join me. So thank you for joining me. Join me next Monday for all of our off-season stuff. very exciting things moving on to our next NFL campaign. Season 3 is a big one. We started out hoping that we could get to the playoffs by season number 3, and who knows? We just might do it. Until next time, I'm Tuxedo T-Shirt. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm out.